So let's talk about the fearful avoidant attachment style relationship repeat. Now, what I mean by this is that you probably find yourself, if you're willing to pay close attention, attracting the same types of people and dynamics in relationships over and over again. Now, for a large portion of fearful avoidance, this can be the same type of person romantically. That's maybe like your Achilles heel in relationships, or the person that you always sort of end up going back to, that sort of archetype of person. It can also be that you end up in the same types of relationship dynamics. For example, one way relationships over and over and over again on a repeat, whether it be with a friend and then a family member and then a romantic partner, and you find yourself constantly in the same kind of type of relationship. Well, this is because we all have a subconscious comfort zone for relationships. And in this video, we're going to cover exactly what yours likely is. We're going to cover the root cause of why this actually happens. And then we're going to talk about something you can do to actually break the pattern and stop, especially if you find yourself in relationship dynamics with people or situations that you want to put an end to. I will say before I dive into the video as well that this is something everybody goes through. You're going to see this a lot throughout the video. I'm going to give you some examples. This is something I saw in every single client situation without exception to this day, after like 10, 12 years of working with people. And this all has to do with the subconscious mind. So if you want to do a much deeper dive into a course all about this specifically, you can check out the Emotional Mastery and Belief Reprogramming course for free for 7 days using the link down below that will go much more deeply into this topic. So essentially, when working with clients, because as many of you know, who watch this channel, I ran a really busy client-based practice for the better part of a decade before actually starting PDS. And I would see over and over again these repeat cycles for people in their lives, to the point where I would actually spend the first session, the discovery session with clients, actually just looking for these things. And I'll give you a few examples of this. So let's say I have a client, we'll call this client Susan, and this client grows up and they feel bullied in their, peer dynamics at school and perhaps in their family. Maybe they have a whole bunch of brothers and, they feel like they're kind of the odd one out and they feel bullied in that kind of dynamic as well. I'm definitely not saying that all brothers bully their sisters, but I'm just saying, as an example here. And then this person grows up. They have these wounds around feeling unsafe. They have these wounds around feeling rejected. They have these wounds around feeling excluded. And because your subconscious mind literally creates the reality, the sort of the filter you view the world through, you are more likely to also project these wounds onto other circumstances. So you grow up, you feel like this as a child or in your childhood, and then you grow up and as an adult, you feel the exact same way. And so what happens? Well, you maybe go into a workplace in a new place with new people, and you might find yourself constantly waiting for rejection to happen, constantly feeling not good enough, constantly feeling unsafe and walking on eggshells, and feeling frustrated and defeated. And as a result of all of these different feelings, you're probably going to be more reactive in your environment. And so, as a result of all of that, you may find that you're in these arguing, sort of fighting dynamics again in your workplace as an adult. Also, maybe feeling excluded, having a difficult time fitting in because sometimes these wounds where we really fear rejection, being not good enough, being excluded, make us feel insecure and don't even allow us to really show our true self to other people, meaning we're more likely to be disliked. We're more likely to have a hard time connecting. And then, of course, if on top of that, you pair that with feeling unsafe and defensive, somebody who's constantly defensive and making defensive remarks in their workplace, you see how this path plays out. Now, I'm not under any circumstances blaming the person because blaming would not even be an accurate thing to do. What I am saying is this has to do with unresolved childhood trauma. And what you'll see is every single time that we have unsolved childhood trauma, it programs our subconscious mind with these different imprints, these wounds around feeling things like I will be disliked, I'm not good enough, something's wrong with me, or I'm defective. I'll be excluded, I'll be rejected. And we take these wounds and they literally, as I mentioned earlier, color the filter we see the world through at a subconscious level. And so, what ends up taking place here is that as an adult, we keep reprojecting these wounds out, and all of these wounds are more and more likely to become self fulfilling prophecies because that's how it works. Another example of this could be that you constantly find yourself in relationships where you feel taken advantage of. And if you actually take a deeper look into this, this could be because you are constantly emotionally taking advantage of yourself to please others or be there for others at the expense of the relationship to yourself. And maybe it's not just emotionally, maybe it's financially, maybe it's mentally in terms of like your learning and support for people at work or in other areas of life. So you want to take a look and you want to be like, what are my relationship repeat patterns? Now, this is something I've been talking about for a very long time inside PDS. And I really want to like give you an exercise here for what you can do. And by the way, as well, if you want to do a much deeper dive into this whole topic, you can actually go into the Emotional Mastery Belief Reprogramming course using the link down below, and for free access, of course, it's like literally all about this and helps you deeply learn the reprogramming tools necessary to set these patterns to rest. So as I mentioned, every single person has this internal world on repeat, but they don't realize because the external world changes. And so you often get locked in these patterns of, feeling the same type of way, the same types of wounds are triggered, the same types of frustrations are what you're experiencing, but you don't realize because it's not with a parent like it was in childhood, it's now with a romantic partner. And so you're not seeing the parallels. But if you actually were to just observe your internal world, you'd see you're experiencing the same type of core beliefs being triggered, the same type of painful thought patterns, the same type of emotions, the same types of coping mechanisms may even come up for you. So this is really important to pay attention to. Now, for the fearful avoidance specifically, you'll tend to see that it's the trauma from childhood. I want you to imagine it's like a thread threading through your experience. So fearful avoidant trauma in childhood, you might see you have this experience of like, maybe you have betrayal trauma. And so then you internalize that in the relationship to yourself. And you may end up betraying your own boundaries to please other people or to be there for others. You may end up betraying yourself because you're not speaking up or using your voice until you get angry and frustrated. And maybe by then it's too late. So you want to look for like where you are actually in this state of betrayal in the relationship to yourself, because it is then that our subconscious mind will keep re-attracting people who mirror back to us how we treat ourselves. In other words, you'll see from relationship to relationship, the people you're attracted to, you're largely attracted to them because they're familiar to you. And what they're mirroring is literally the relationship to yourself. So if you betray yourself all the time, you'll be attracted to somebody who's more likely to betray you. So it's a really important thing to pay attention to. Now, for fearful avoidance, these are some of the common dynamics that you'll see. And again, just showing you that thread, like you get betrayed in childhood, you internalize that relationship and those imprints, you betray your own standards, needs, boundaries, then you are more likely to attract people in that space. Okay. So the same thread will apply to all these different characteristics I'm going to share that are most common for fearful avoidance. If you abandon yourself all the time, more likely to attract people who are abandoners, right? Who are not consistent, who aren't necessarily ready for a connection and able to really show up. If you're emotionally unavailable to yourself, you'll probably find that you continuously attract emotionally unavailable people. If you take advantage of yourself to please other people, you'll take advantage or you'll be attracted to advantageous people or invest in those types of relationship dynamics. If you violate your own boundaries all the time, you will likely be a match or, attracted to people who also violate your boundaries. Now, I want to be really clear here. This is not me blaming you, right? Like, I want to be really clear about it because that wouldn't even make logical sense. It was never your fault to begin with. It was trauma that got imprinted into you, and then it became your comfort zone. And how the mind works is to re-carry this out. But you are the only one that can deeply, deeply change this. We're going to talk about how to do that in just a moment. Other honorable mentions. I mean, there's lots of things. You make yourself feel unworthy by putting yourself down. Maybe you are in relationship dynamics where you also feel like the dynamic is where you feel unworthy, unsupported, dishonest people, disconnecting people, all these types of things, inconsistent, all these types of things can actually mirror the relationship to yourself. So here's an exercise. Step number 1. Write out all of the traits that you find yourself attracting on repeat and think of the people who trigger you most. Like maybe it's one old friend plus 2 past romantic partners. And like, what are those parallels? And maybe it's like also a parent or a partner that's current. So try to write out then, like, where am I doing these things in the relationship to myself? And then your way out of this pattern is to do one single thing every day to stop it. So if it's like, I'm never, connecting to myself, I'm not present with myself. So then I'm, attracting people into my life or dynamics where I end up investing in people who are also not present with me. With one thing I can do every day to stop it. It's going to be within the relationship to yourself that you have to reprogram it first, because as you reprogram that subconscious comfort zone, you change that external relationship dynamic. And as a result of that, you are going to change, what you are attracted to, what you keep wanting to invest in, what feels familiar and safe versus what actually allows your alarm bells to go off. Wait, I don't want this in a relationship. And it's not just going to be your conscious mind seeing it, it's going to be your subconscious mind knowing it and also being in alignment with your conscious mind's ability to see clearly. So make a list. And then the way you may stop doing this in the relationship to yourself is like, what's the opposite of this, right? Like if it's to support myself, what are ways I can support myself better? Like make time for myself, make time to self-care, make time to do the things that I want to do that really recharge me or fill my cup. Like I want you to make that list for you. And in doing that, you're going to see that by changing that subconscious comfort zone, because we can leverage repetition and emotion, which are kind of like overarching principles and part of how the subconscious is programmed. So if you do that and then you actually shift and change that dynamic, well, now all of a sudden you're going to see that the entire like wiring of your subconscious mind in relationship to these traits or qualities that you no longer want in your life also changes. And also it's healing, right? Like the added bonus of this is that it's not just that you're going to stop having this, internal pattern that's on repeat from the trauma of your childhood all the time, every day. And you have to ask yourself, like, how have I been actually, if I went through a trauma at 8 years old and now you're, 58 years old, watching this, you have to ask yourself, well, how is this with me 50 years later? It's because it couldn't have stayed with you unless you were reinvesting in it over and over and over again on autopilot. In other words, reigniting it in the relationship to yourself over and over again. So this is so important to change, because we change that, we allow our trauma to actually be left in the past where it belongs. And we heal those different dynamics for the things that we couldn't get access to as children, we now give to ourselves as adults. And then we're attracted to healthier people as a byproduct. So I hope this makes a whole lot of sense. Again, if you want to do a much deeper dive into this, you can actually check out a whole course. It's like an hour and a half based all around this for free for 7 days using the link down below. And if you also want to take an attachment style test to just test where you are, check your percentages, check your progress as well, you can use the link down below to take the attachment style test for free as well. You'll get a report, all that kind of stuff also. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for being here. Please give me a thumbs up if you're enjoying this channel. I would super appreciate it. And I can't wait to see you in future videos.